You want to sell a product, you want to sell a service, you want to sell an idea, then you need an enemy. And that's just how the world works. So Steve Jobs had Microsoft, Muhammad Ali had Joe Frazier, and Bruce Lee had classical karate. Or did he? Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel. Welcome to the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast number 378. This is the one about Bruce Lee's necessary villain. As you're logging in, if you'd be kind enough to say where you're logging in from, hit the like button and feel free to continue doing so throughout the broadcast. If you're catching the simulcast over on the YouTube, please be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as well. But of course, the best thing you can do is to share this video and spread the word about the I Love Jeet Kune broadcast. Okay, so I'm asking a question today. I'm not sure how many Jeet Kune practitioners have ever considered it, right? And so the question is, did Bruce Lee choose classical karate as a villain just to make Jeet Kune more compelling? Because when you read his famous article, Liberate Yourself from Classical Karate, right? If you read it carefully, and I mean, you got to really read it, not just quote it at parties, right? Um, you start to notice something. Bruce Lee was not at war with karate. Bruce Lee was at war, to paraphrase Bob Marley, he was at war with mental slavery. And that is a very different thing. Now, we talked about Jobs and Microsoft. In marketing, it's called positioning. If you want to make your thing stand out, then you have to define it against something else. And Jeet Kune was not born in a vacuum. Jeet Kune was born in the 1960s, a time when there was a lot of change in thought going on in the world, right? Karate and kung fu were not household names as such, but people were aware. People did know about karate. There were karate schools around and what have you, and all these places they had the rituals, as Bruce Lee would call it, and they had the uniforms, and they had the belts, and they had the katas, and all that. And along comes Bruce Lee, and he says, "Nah, no kata, no style, just real fighting." Now that stands out. But here's the catch: if the goal was to promote freedom, then the enemy wasn't classical martial art. It was anything that locked you into imitation, which is what I believe Bruce Lee saw a lot of going on. Where in the traditional martial arts school, everybody was supposed to look the same, right? But that could easily apply to anything else. It could apply to a kung fu style. It could apply to Wing Chun, and as time evolved, that idea of imitation could apply to even Jeet Kune Do itself. So if we check the source, right, Bruce Lee wrote, "It is conceivable that a long time ago, a certain martial artist discovered some partial truth." Now, when you first read that, right, okay, he's writing this in 71 or thereabouts. So maybe he's talking about like Miyamoto Musashi or something, right? But then when you read it again today, it's like, oh my God, maybe Bruce Lee was prescient and was talking about himself. Anyhow, it is conceivable that a long time ago, a certain martial artist discovered some partial truth. After his death, his students took his method and turned it into law. And in doing so, they buried the founder's wisdom. So, is that about classical karate? Or is that about what people do with knowledge? Is Bruce Lee attacking martial art in particular? Or is he warning us about like turning wisdom into religion? You get what I'm saying? Right? Because he also wrote, "A teacher is never a giver of truth. He is a guide, a pointer to the truth that the student must discover for himself." That is not an attack on a particular style. That is an attack on mindless obedience. So think about this. We've talked about this before. Bruce Lee introduced full contact sparring with equipment, right? It's a pretty big innovation, except that the same classical karate in Okinawa, they were doing that as far back as the 1930s. If you've seen the guys in the bamboo protective gear and what have you, right? And even during Bruce Lee's time, there was a lot of what we would call traditional karate that was very rough and tumble, right? People used to get their noses smashed, and people probably lost teeth and whatever. That type of stuff was not uncommon. Bruce Lee criticized non-contact, like point sparring, right? And yes, but that's not to say that that's what all of karate was doing. So maybe, just maybe, Bruce Lee didn't have the full picture and couldn't paint the full picture. So maybe he was using karate as a symbol for a bigger issue. And that bigger issue would have been rigid thinking. So if he's using classical martial art as a metaphor for institutionalized thinking, then what happens when Bruce Lee's own followers start institutionalizing his thinking? So if you get people saying things like, well, Bruce Lee didn't use that. Oh, well, that's not in JKD. Or, oh, well, that's too karate-ish. I don't know. I've heard the story. I never verified it or anything, but I've heard the story that there was some kind of like sparring incident or whatever, and people were talking about, let's say, Shotokan, right? And then Bruce Lee was like, okay, well, come spar me, and I'll use Shotokan against your JKD or whatever, right? So suddenly, if people are turning Bruce, if they're institutionalizing Bruce Lee's thinking, then we're no longer liberating ourselves from anything, right? What we're doing is pretty much repeating the cycle that he warned against. So we're not free. We're kind of like trapped, right? But we're trapped in a different cage. Now we're trapped in the JKD cage, right? Or we're trapped in a cage. Somebody said to me, it's a cage with Bruce Lee's name on the door. Right? So the article ends with stuff about that the paragraphs in his article are at best a finger pointing to the moon, right? And don't, the whole don't mistake. Now I sound like Joe Biden, the thing, right? Um, the whole enter the dragon thing, don't miss all the heavenly glory and what have you, right? Okay, so what does all that mean? Again, I speak only for myself. Bruce Lee was not giving us the answer. Bruce Lee was giving us a tool. Bruce Lee was being that pointer to the truth. Bruce Lee was being a catalyst. So it's not a style, it's not method, it's not a villain. If you think that classical karate was the enemy, then you missed the point. The real enemy was always, I'm going to get esoteric here. The real enemy was always inside of us, right? Our fear of being wrong, our need to follow and sometimes blindly, and then our obsession with certainty. Okay. So maybe Bruce Lee did need an enemy, because sometimes the best way to make a point is to kind of like draw a line in the sand, right? Even if it's only, to quote my best buddy Bucky, to quote Bucky, even if that line is only a symbolic representation, Bucky, right? So, to paraphrase Dan Kennedy, don't mistake marketing for the message, right? Bruce Lee was not trying to destroy karate. Bruce Lee was trying to wake up everybody who came across him. And that, my friends, is something that I think we still need today. Okay? So that's it for me for today. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through your your comments, but if you want, why if you have to, so on Friday, right? This is just my way of telling you. On Friday, we're doing Q&A, open Q&A, ask me anything. So if you have stuff that is engendered by today's broadcast, put that in the comments in question form, because I gotta go. I gotta go run some errands. So I'm not gonna be able to go through the comments now. So if anything that I said today has engendered a question, put it in the comments in question form, and I'll answer it on Friday at 6 p.m. When we get together. But as of right now, this is all I'm going to say in this video. Okay. All right. So at paypal.me/unified MA Miami, paypal.me/unified MA Miami. This is where the Jeet Kune Journey Volume 1 is available. And that's paypal.me/unified MA Miami. The It's still a small store, but it's growing, right, every week. The Rebel Gear store is now open, and you can find that at there we go. Check that out. Rebelgear.printify.me. Rebelgear.printify.me. As you know, I'm a busy guy, but as I get time, I'll add more and more and more stuff to that store. I'll also make sure that I add the original stuff that we used to have back in the old store. If you have not yet gone over to Jeet Kune Drills here on Facebook, please do that. Like and follow that page over there. One more announcement: my student Wayne Quinton down in Barbados. This GoFundMe URL 03D3BED3 is to help support his wife Petal's fight against breast cancer. Right, so if you would go there and make a contribution, I would very much appreciate that. Oh wait, no, there is one more. Dig this, because I finally got the graphic fixed, and so, okay, here we go. This is my video series that I shot a couple of years ago. So it's not brand new, right? But this is the Quick Skills series, Volume 1. And that is available. It's a convoluted Gumroad destination. So write it down quickly, right? The JKD Rebel .gumroad/L, that's not an I, /XZALL. Okay, so I'll leave that up there for a couple of seconds. That's my quick Junfon kickboxing series, and I think there's one more. No, maybe not. No, that's it. Right? Okay. All right. So you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Rebel, signing off. Take care, and we'll talk soon. Did I tell you that today is a pastel day? So I went with that.